Well, hello, David, and welcome to About Freedom Show. How are you today?
Good, Sergey. Thank you so much for inviting me.
My pleasure. Now, David, I'm going to ask you right away about what happened about your NDE, if you want to tell us the story.
Yeah, it was back in 1983, and I was the chief engineer of a research vessel. We did underwater exploration. It was my dream job. And in March of 83, we were evaluating some new submarines. Actually, it was remote operated vehicles, little remote vehicles. And we had the design engineers on board and stuff like that. And we just finished our evaluation of this new equipment. And we were heading back to our home port. And there was a storm. There was a big storm. And so we were trying to beat the storm into the harbor, so that we could get in. But we didn't quite make it. And so the storm overtook us. And the harbor master refused entry because we were a big, 143-foot research vessel, and it's a small harbor. So he was afraid that, we would have difficulty because there were 25, 30-foot breakers at the seawall. So he asked us to wait until, till the storm had passed. But the design engineer of this submarine needed to get into LAX. So, so the captain and some of the subcrew people decided to put the Zodiac, which is a small rubber boat, into the water, and we use it to retrieve our submarines and stuff like that. And we've done it in heavy seas, and so we weren't really all that concerned. But we, the only person on board that knew the harbor that well, besides the captain, was me. So, and we didn't have our normal crew on if we were doing a job or something like that. We had a small crew just because we were evaluating equipment. So, so the captain asked me to go. I was chief engineer. Normally, I don't go out on the small boats that much, but and there was a mate, and so the mate and I were taking relieving this crew and bringing them in. So we took a bearing. And we got in the boat. But fortunately this night, one thing that we did do is it was because it was really rough. And we do underwater exploration, so we spend a lot of time on the water, under the water, And this night we actually put on life vests. I can honestly say most of my time on that ship, I never wore a life vest. But this night we put on some life vests. We went down to the bosun's locker, beat the dirt off them because they'd been down there for so long. And then we got in the boat and we started heading in. Well, sir, you can imagine the 25-foot rollers, those big swells. We would go up on the top of one, take a bearing on the harbor, and then go down the trough and up on top of the next swell and do the same thing over and over again until we could get in. Well, we lost track of the harbor buoy. And so we kind of lost our orientation, but we figured worst case, with this type of craft, we can do a beach landing and we can get this guy into the harbor somehow. So we just decided to just head into the beach. And we didn't know it at the time, but the storm had blown us actually a mile south of the harbor. And so we hit this breaker zone. We actually drove the Zodiac off a 25-footer and landed, and the swell just was washing us. And so I yelled to the mate to turn us around because I was in the bow trying to figure out where on the beach we were. And he turned us around, and the next one was right above us, and it came down on top of us, and it folded that Zodiac in half. I like to say like a peanut butter sandwich. It just folded it right in half. I was in the bow, so it catapulted me into the water, and I was immediately tumbled and tossed like a rag doll. I mean, it was the most violence I think I've ever experienced in my life. And I just totally lost orientation. I didn't know what was up, what was down. It was nighttime when this was happening, so I really couldn't see anything. I tried, blow some bubbles to see what was up and down. That was a waste of time, but I just held my breath. And I figured, well, I've got this old life vest. It was one of those old World War II Mae West puffy orange, pillow type life vests. I'm just hang on to Mae West and she'll bring me up to the surface. And so I was just trying to protect myself. And, time goes by. You can only hold your breath so long. I was a commercial diver, and I knew I could hold my breath for about 3 minutes. That was max if I'd prepared. But so eventually, the euphoria, oxygen deprivation takes effect. You start to become euphoric, and eventually you breathe. It's a natural thing. It just happens. And I drowned. Well, I immediately found myself in this blackness, absolute blackness. And I was curious because I'm a commercial diver. I've gone through oxygen deprivation training. I've gone through a lot of this stuff. And so I was curious. What is this? Where am I? How, what is going on? But the funny thing was, I didn't feel like I was alone. I felt like I was in this presence, absolute darkness, but I felt like I was alone and yet not alone. It's very hard to describe, but it felt like I was in this grander presence. And I saw a light, just a pinprick of a light, and I started to move toward it. And as I got closer, I saw that the light was millions upon millions of fragments of light, and they were all moving in unison. It was beautiful. It was awe-inspiring. It was, and my curiosity was just over the top. So I just kept moving toward this light. And as I got closer, I started to feel this warm embrace. Now, on the west coast of the United States, the ocean comes out of the north, and the water in March is very cold. But suddenly I'm feeling this warm embrace, and I feel like I'm being wrapped in this. And as I keep getting closer and closer to this light, these fragments of light, it feels like I'm being just bombarded with this feeling of love and this warm embrace. And so I was just captivated by this and kept moving closer and closer. And as I got closer, 3 fragments broke away. And those 3 fragments came, and when they broke away, I got the clear communication of being welcomed home. Welcomed home. This was my real home. And eventually a dozen of these lights, these light beings, came and welcomed me. And I recognized, and while this was going on, I tried to look at myself, and I realized that I was becoming light as well. I was a light being as well, just like them. And they felt like family to me. So much like family, more than the family that I live with in this life. And so I was just so overjoyed to be in the presence. And they communicated to me that we were going to go into the light, and we went in further into the light, into this area. To me, it felt like a giant bubble, this big sphere. And we started to re-experience my life. When I say re-experience my life, it was like I saw all of my life's interactions, but not just through my point of view, but through everyone I'd ever interacted with, through their perspective. It was like my consciousness was fragmented into these multiple streams of consciousness, all at the same time. It was incredibly humbling. In order to become the chief engineer in my mid-20s, I was a brash young man. And so the things that I was re-experiencing and reliving my life, some of it I wasn't too proud of, because this soul family, they were experiencing it the same way I was. They were experiencing the same interactions, the same multiple streams of reaction and everything. And so I was I had a little bit, there were a lot of moments in my life that I was like, boy, I wish they didn't have to see that. But I also got to see some amazing moments when I would do something with no intention of any kind of reward or anything, but I would do something for someone with loving intention, just do something for someone. And those seem to be the biggest events in life. I was quite surprised that the things that I took a lot of pride in, I had a lot of ego going into this near-death experience. And so some of the things that I took a lot of pride in was, like becoming chief engineer of the research vessel, things like that meant very little. But when I would do something that had loving intention, then that would create these huge ripples, like, in the energy and in the interaction between people and things like that. So it was incredibly humbling to see yourself in this way through other people's eyes and that sort of thing, and feeling what they felt when you interacted with them. That was incredibly humbling. And you get to see the interconnection that we all have with each other. So this went on, but it kept going, even past where I had drowned. It continued. And so I was a little disoriented because I didn't realize it at the time, but I was looking at my potential future. Well, my soul family just loved me. They supported me, and we went down this. And what it looked like, everything in the life review up until my death was absolutely crystal clear. All the interactions and everything was crystal clear. But when we reached that threshold of potential future, it was like I was looking down a corridor, and but there was the things to the right, the things to the left, the periphery was a little out of focus, but I felt like if I wanted to, I could go over this way or I could go over that way. But the clear path was down the center of this corridor. Well, we proceeded down there for quite a little while. We saw a number of events, and then the light itself, these millions of fragments of light in unity, spoke. And it said, "This is not your time. You must return." And I said, "No way. I'm not, no. My body is just, it was very undesirable to go back into that cold body." And so I argued with what I perceived as God. And I've got a family here that I never knew. I'm loved like I've never been loved before. And I'm not going to go back. And the light spoke one more time. It said, "You must return. You have a purpose." And that word purpose just resonated in my being, because when we're beyond this life, we're connected to a more expansive consciousness. I like to say it's like we're connected to all the souls that ever were and all the souls that ever will be. And we have this expansive understanding. And so when they spoke that word purpose, I understood it. And it was simple, it was efficient, and I immediately came to acceptance. And the minute I came to acceptance, I found myself back in the water, observing my body this time, not in my body, but outside my body. And the three original soul family members that had greeted me were with me. And we were watching my body as it was still being tumbled and tossed. It had gotten caught in the breaker zone. And so some of the wreckage of the Zodiac, so there was still a pontoon that still had some air in it, but the bow line of it had wrapped itself around this arm, and the bitter end of the bow line was tapping my lifeless chest. And another set of waves came, and that pontoon popped up. And when it did, it it cinched that line around my arm, and it yanked my body up to the surface. And I just followed it up. And I really saw in detail everything that was happening to my body, because it dislocated my shoulder, my thumb, when that line yanked on my body. And my body got tangled up in the lines and the wreckage, and the waves kept pounding me up against that Zodiac. And when it did, some of that salt water came out of my lungs, and that's when my soul family gave me kind of a gentle push, and I resonated back into my body. Well, we were on the surface, and my friends had stayed on station. Sergey, they were the real heroes, because they had stayed there, realized that I was missing, and were looking for me. And I couldn't speak because I'm expelling water, and it affects your larynx. So all I could do was squeak and squawk. But someone there had held onto a flashlight. How they kept a flashlight, I never know. But they were, looking for me, sweeping the flashlight around the surface, and they found me. They saw me. They came over, and then we had to swim a mile in the rest of the way. It was a rough night. It was a rough night. But the funny thing is on the way in, I kept feeling like I was going under. I felt like I couldn't stay on the surface. I kept feeling like I was sinking. And I don't have that problem. I mean, I've got thousands of hours in the water as a diver, and I don't. But when we come back, we feel like we're half here and half there. And with that, I still had some of that expansive knowing, and I knew there was something wrong with my life vest. And I opened it up, and I popped the clip in the front, and I realized that the fiber lining, or the canvas lining, had dry rotted, and the fiber inside had become saturated with the salt water, and that was actually it was pulling me down. So I ditched the life vest, and I was able to then stay on the surface and be able to, hold on with my one good arm and scissor kick my way in as we swam in. But that feeling of being half here and half there, that stayed with me for like 3 days. And like I was living here, but I was also living, with this expansiveness. And I also, a few things happened, when I got back. One, because I was an engineer, so I saw things, pretty much black and white. That was, if I had lived it and I experienced it in school, then I trusted it. But suddenly I would get this information, these knowings that came out of nowhere. Also, I started seeing auras. I didn't even know what they were when it first started, but this is Southern California, and the palm trees and everything is just absolute. They have these amazing auras, and I was just captivated by this. It was like, what is this? I called it life force energy because I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what an aura was, and so, but all this information that was coming to me, these auras, and I could see when I would look into somebody's eyes, I would see their fragment of light. I could see their light essence. And that felt intrusive to me. That felt incredibly intrusive. It's like, I should not be looking at that depth of your being without your permission, I should have your permission in order to look at your light essence. I don't know why, but that was the way I felt at the time. And so all of this strangeness freaked me out, absolutely freaked me out. I was like, I want my old life back. I don't know what's happening to me. Am I going nuts? But I just want my old life back. And so, but it wouldn't go away. And as hard as I tried to put this experience behind me. And so I like to say, I just wanted to stuff it in a box and wrap it up with duct tape and put a big old sign on it that said, "Do not touch," and shove it as far away as I possibly could. But these experiences don't let you do that. They don't let you do that. You have to, because the experience itself is more real than life. I mean, this feels like we're in a dream now, whereas that was hyper real. And so I took what I could deal with at the time. That life review and the love, okay, I could deal with that. The talking to God and arguing with God, that was a little over the top for me. So it was like, that was the part I couldn't deal with. I didn't want to face that. So what I did is I took, some of the lessons that I saw in that life review of being, after seeing yourself in that detail, I could come to accept, this is who I am. This is who I am. I got work to do. I definitely got to work on myself. But this is who I am. So I called it acceptance. I could accept that this is who I am. And then the other thing was, I saw that a lot of times people cross our paths and they're not really, they're making choices that maybe you and I wouldn't agree with. Okay. Well, that's fine. And so I suddenly learned tolerance, and I had no tolerance for other people before this experience. My philosophy before this experience was, you cut your swath through life and you survive. That was I had a survivalist kind of mentality before this experience. And now I suddenly saw how, people are in and out of our lives all the time. And a lot of times our interactions, we may not agree with, but we could be tolerant because that's their choices. That's their life. They get to pick that sort of thing, And so between acceptance and tolerance, I figured I can move forward with that. And then the other thing that was a little harder for my engineer brain to grasp was truth, of personal truth. Because I, as an engineer, I saw things, that I'd learned in school, that I experienced in life, and that, pretty much black and white. Well, in this experience, I realized that there are things that we hold dear within our heart, and those are our personal truths. And so when we come across a personal truth, we feel it. We actually get a physical feeling of something, and it kind of mimics that expansiveness. And so we know that there's something there that is personally true to us. And so this personal truth became a kind of a guiding light for me. Whenever I would feel that presence of truth, then I would look more deeply in that direction. Maybe I would change my course, and move in that direction. So it became kind of a guiding light. But when I tried to share my experience, I got a really bad reaction to the first person I shared it with. And then also the guys I worked with back in '83, underwater exploration was incredibly dangerous, and we put each other's lives in each other's hands every day. So I didn't feel like I could share this with them because death was a taboo subject. It just was a taboo subject because we faced it a lot. And so it wasn't something that, we had a tough job. And so that wasn't something that we would talk about. Instead, the guys on that boat and I, that night, when we got back and when we finally, started talking about that night, it was like, we all faced our mortality that night. I died and came back. They didn't know that. But they knew I was missing for, they said, 15 to 18 minutes. And so they were like, Dave, what happened? Where were you for that time? You can't hold your breath that long. And I was like, yeah, well, Neptune spit me back. And I just made light of it. It was like, because young guys, when we get in a bad situation, what do? The bravado comes out, right? And we make light of it. We laugh it off. because we're just going to get by. We're not going to, we're not going to focus on it. So it was quite an ordeal.
Wow. So let's go with the questions. I'm making notes here. Whenever you answer the question, I'll be
okay.
So you said that you felt like you were half here and half there for 3 days. How about later in life? Did you still feel like that, or you came back to your
There
normal?
are moments.
Okay.
Yeah, there are moments. After the experience, I've had a number of experiences since then. And in those experiences, yeah, I would feel that same, feeling of being really connected to my source, to my inner connection. And then I started more of a spiritual practice. I called it my quiet ministry, because I was going to try to live my life by what I'd learned in this experience. And so in that quiet ministry, I started doing, meditation, and I created I have a morning routine that helps me to start my day. And when I do that, it helps me to be on track, to be centered, so that I'm kind of flowing with the day and not fighting my way through the day, that sort of thing. So I've learned, because, I had the original experience back in 83. That's quite a few years ago. So I've had a lot of time to work with it. And I had a second experience where suddenly after that, I could actually communicate with my soul family. And so I speak with them all the time. And so they help me, they guide me, they kind of point me in a direction, or they highlight something that I should pay more attention to and move in a certain direction. A lot of times maybe I'll get a warning like prepare for what, but I'll get a message to prepare for change. That was a big one that I got at one point in my life. And then I had a huge experience with I had stage 4 lung and bone cancer. And it was a huge change, but it was part of that purpose, because that was a search that I went on the minute that I came back, is like purpose. What's the purpose, and so that became quite a driving force in my life. At first I thought it was, well, let's find out what this love was, this love that was so overpowering, so immense in the experience. So it was a part of everything. Everything was love, and love was everything. And how can we experience that in the physical world, that sort of thing. So I thought that maybe that was my purpose. And so I explored that for a while. And that took me in some good, put me in some good situations, but then, life evolves. And so you keep following, where guidance takes you.
Yeah. In my humble experience here, I had the honor to interview about 30 near-death experiencers, and they're saying the same story. So they can have different experiences in other areas, but as far as life review goes, they see what they were doing from somebody else's perspective. That's what they see, and they feel that. And also, the source says you got to come back because you have a purpose. This is all the same. You have a purpose, you have things to do. And the purpose is different. Some say that they had to come back because they have small children, or because they had to take care of somebody. They have some, but you didn't know your purpose when you come back. How did you find your purpose eventually?
Yeah, well, it evolves. It's kind of interesting because it became quite a journey to try to find my purpose, but when you start having when you connect with your own divine nature, then you're able to develop that guidance. and so that starts leading you into your purpose. I believe we have multiple purposes in life. It's not just one grand purpose. I think I think that we have a lot of small purposes. There are times when you may come across maybe you're reading something and you learn something new, and then all of a sudden, synchronistically, someone comes into your life and they have a need for the information that you just learned. And so you're able to provide that assistance. You're there to help. And that is a small purpose. Okay, those are the little purposes that are in our path along the way. And then I believe that humanity has some shared purposes. Like there's one great purpose for humanity to become aware of our own divine nature. Okay, and that's why there's been religion. That's why there's been gurus. There's been spiritual teachers through the ages, is because they've all been trying to teach us that we have our divine nature that's available to us. But we live in a world of circumstance. And so we get caught up in the circumstances, which pulls us away from our divine nature, pulls us away from our natural instincts to live a more life connected to our divine nature, so that we flow through life instead of fighting our way through. And so once I started to learn these little details, I was able to start looking more closely at my purpose. And I had some other spiritual experiences that put me in a place where I could help others. And I saw that, boy, when I could help others, that really, really resonated with my truth. And so then that was another key to understanding my purpose and my direction that I needed to go.
Okay, helping others. This is a very common message to people who've been on the other side. They say that too. But how do you differentiate between real help a person needs or somebody's trying to use you?
Yeah, I come across that quite a bit because I've got a lot of followers. So I have people that, reach out, and that's my wife calls it the spidey sense, it's like, or there's sniff test, you have to develop a sense of where someone's coming from. When someone comes to you and they're sincere, there's a feeling of being, they're not being critical, they're not being sarcastic, they're not being needy. Sometimes, needy and they have a need are two different things. So a lot of time people just want advice on how they can proceed forward. And that's where I tend to work, is because I do energetic healing as well. And so when people come to me, they, and energetic healing works not only just on physical, it's also mental, emotional, and spiritual. So I get clients in all of those categories that come to me that want help. And so I do that. But also I like to help people. Every day I post stuff on out on social media and stuff like that, with because in my morning routine I contemplate, is part of contemplation, and that's what my podcast is all about, is about learning to be contemplative in your life so that you can grow spiritually. And so I put a lot of that out. And so the communication that I have with people tend to be very sincere. I think that once we are working from our center, I think it's kind of like a light to a moth, where we draw the people that really, really need that light, that need that attention. And so it's very easy to identify someone who's trying to use me instead of someone who wants to actually have open, honest, and authentic communication,
Yeah. Well, I have a neighbor here, and he likes to drink. alcohol. And he used to come here and ask me for a little bit of money. It's not a lot of money, but I give him one time, second time, and he's sincerely needy, like you said. Sincere, sincerely needs the money so he can drink, you know? And then he comes one time, two times, three times, and I say, you know what? His name is Michael. I say, Michael, I have a lot of work to do here in my garden. Go ahead, work for 1 hour, and I'll pay you, you know, and you can go and drink whatever you do. He said, okay, I'm going to come tomorrow. And he never showed up. And then he comes again, I'm back for money. I say, there's work to do, a lot of work to do. He said, okay, I'm going to come tomorrow. He never shows up. So was I helping this person? By turning him away,
No.
I helped him. No? Okay.
I think so. I would say yes, because you showed him that there's a responsibility, you know,
Yeah.
that, you know, and money is energetic. We have to realize that exchange of currency there's an energy behind it, you know, and it's something that we have to recognize as part of living in this physical world. That, you know, we have to deal with that. We got to pay the rent, you know. We got to pay the rent.
Now, almost the same thing we spoke right now about this. It's almost the same question. You said, do something for someone. What do you mean by that?
What I'm talking about is when it's heart-centered, when you are doing something for someone with your heart, and you're not looking for any reward. You're not looking for anything back. Okay.
Yeah.
It's just heart-centered. I really feel like I want to help you from my heart. And I don't need anything from you. Okay. I'm just going to help you from my heart, and I don't need anything from you.
Okay. I know you might want to keep it anonymous, but can you give us some example of what you're doing?
Yeah, I'll give you an example, actually, that I saw through my life review that had a huge impact for me, that kind of illustrated this. There was when I was younger, I used to work as a meat cutter in a grocery store, and it was an old-fashioned butcher shop where we used to wrap the meat up in paper and that sort of thing. Okay, so an old-fashioned butcher shop. And we used to have this lady would come in the store, and everybody would hide whenever this lady came in because she was really, really grumpy. Okay. And she would just make everybody miserable all the time. And so I don't know. She would come up to the counter and she would want things, and I would take care of her, and she was never, ever happy. And I thought, you know, I'd like to see this lady smile. I wonder what she looks like when she smiles. And so I started trying to give her like this extra service just to see if I could get a smile. And one time she came in and she was having a party. It was near the holidays, and she was going to have this party. And so she wanted to make this roast for some guests that were coming over for a dinner. And so I went and I got this special roast. I picked out the best I could. And I wrapped it up for her, and I told her, you know, how to prepare it, everything. You know, I gave her everything, and sent her on her way. But when I was doing it, I was thinking, boy, you know, I think she's really going to enjoy this. And I was putting my heart into this interaction, and I gave her this roast. And a few days later, she came in, and of course, everybody then scatters again. And she came beelined right up to the meat counter, and all of a sudden, this big smile, and she, you know, and so I did get something back from her. I got a smile, okay? But that was all I needed. I didn't need anything special from her. She came and she told me all about how this, and in the life review, I actually got to see her doing the roast and her guests, and I got to see the reaction. I got to see all of that, but we don't get to see that in life, you know, because we only get to see what's in front of us. We can't see how our actions, you know, create the interactions. And so I got to see this interaction with this little old lady, but that was something that I did. It was just a heartfelt thing. I wanted to see her. I wanted to make her smile. And so it doesn't have to be big. It does, you know, you know, Sergey, it doesn't have to be big. We can do these little things for each other that can have a huge impact. You know, we don't, when we're kind to one another, it's really far reaching.
You know, I would rephrase that. I would say we could do these things anonymously for ourselves. You're doing something for somebody else, but you're doing it for yourself. Because you feel, when you give something, you feel much better than when you receive. That's a fact.
Yep.
And especially when you do it anonymously, you just have this beautiful feeling. You didn't tell anybody, but you just feel good for some reason, for a while, for a long time. It's just like a little secret that you've done. Nobody knows. Only you and the universe knows that. And it's very rewarding.
Yeah, I like to think of it as planting seeds. You know, you're planting little seeds of positivity out there and just letting them go.
Yeah. Now, you said that after this experience, you could see other people's life essence. I had another guest recently, and he was in a gang. He was a gangster or something before his near-death experience. And he told me that after this near-death experience, when he was talking to his former friends, he had to put some dark glasses so they don't see his eyes, because he saw through these people everything he knew. He felt so ashamed that he sees everything. He saw their thoughts, he saw their intentions, he saw everything, and he said, "Okay, they're gonna find out that they're gonna kill me because they know that that I know." So, how was your experience with that? You didn't deal with gangsters, no?
I didn't deal with gangsters, no, but it felt intrusive for me. It was very difficult for me because, well, one, I didn't know what it was at first, but to be able to see someone's light, their inner being, you know, it's something that should be honored, not taken lightly. So I would, because before this experience, I was the guy that was in your face. You know, I was, you know, eyeball to eyeball, in your face kind of guy. And afterwards, when I started seeing other people's light, it was like I couldn't look at you eye to eye. It took a while for me to get the ability to turn it off, and so that I could communicate with people like I normally would, but when we would have a more heart to heart type of conversation, then I could see, you know. So it's hard to explain. It's a matter of intention. I intend to be, you know, first I'm going to communicate just regular stuff to you, then I don't need to see, you know. But if we're going to, especially with clients and things like that, then, you know, they're asking for my help or something like that, then I feel like I can turn it on.
Okay, so you're not turning on that feature. It's not always on. Okay,
it's not always on. No, it was when I first came back. It was, and it was scared me. It was terrifying, you know. But then I learned, and the same thing with the auras. Seeing auras at first was just I couldn't turn it off, and that's why this experience really freaked me out when I came back, and suddenly all of this was happening when you know, the day before I couldn't see auras, I couldn't see that, you know, so it was shocking at first, but it did dissipate, and then I could, you know, when I focus, I can see auras. But I have to make the effort now. I have to make the intention.
Yeah, you have to concentrate. So now, how did you see those auras? Did you see like a light or the colors or some kind of dark energy?
Yeah, it was kind of interesting because I was quite surprised. Like I mentioned, the palm trees. Well, they had just a bright aura, and the same thing with some of the big, because, you know, like in landscaping, they put big stones and things as part of the landscaping and things like that. And even they had light, But then when it was something that had more of a level of consciousness, it had color. Okay, so animals, people, even flowers would have more of a sense of, especially like a flower that opens up to the sunlight and follows the sunlight. It would have a little color with its aura and stuff like that. But but yeah, people, animals, they would they would all have color, and I just was because at the time when I came home that after this experience, we had a small parrot, and even he had an aura. It was like. And I would just stare at him like, what is going on? But yeah.
So some people had one aura, and other people have a different aura. Or it may change in the middle of a conversation. Let's say you talk,
It
and
can,
the mood changes.
With emotion and with passion and with it would change. Yes. Yeah. So, like an aura when someone is concentrating is really close into the body, and when they're feeling joy and happy and all of that, the aura expands quite a bit. So yeah, it's always changing. It's kind of it fluctuates quite a bit.
So this is why this aura is affecting other people around you, because we don't see it. Most people don't see it. You can see it, but most people don't. And this aura is expanding and touching other people in the company. Let's say, and they feel joy or they feel sad. They don't know why, but that's the aura touching them.
Yeah, well, we exchange energy all the time, and when we come into contact with each other, and well, I have another point I want to make, but first I'll finish this thought. When we're when we're close to each other, our auras touch each other, and through that touching of auras, there's a communication that happens. It's like when someone comes into the room and you suddenly get a gut feeling like, I don't know if I trust this guy. That's your energy exchanging right there, the same and the same thing when someone comes in and it's like, boy, I feel like I've known them my entire life. It's because your energy has exchanged, and suddenly you know this. But also, we don't realize quite so much, and it's not as intense as when we're in each other's proximity. But when we think of someone, we actually send an energetic message and touch them just by thinking about them, just by, envisioning them. We actually, so when we're mad at someone, we're sending that angry energy at them. When we're happy for someone, we're sending that to them.
All right, but let me ask you a question about the angry. Let's say a lot of people on this planet right now are mad at Putin, for example, Vladimir Putin. And you see him on TV and he's like, doesn't care. He still looks great, like a flower. I mean, how this energy, yeah, it is. He looks great. Like you're getting younger. And now, how this energy, you said, is not affecting him at all?
Yeah, well, he has, some of us are more sensitive, and some of us actually have turned it off. I believe that, a lot of people are angry at him. But he is more focused on power, so he's not, he surrounds himself with power and shields himself from feeling, that sort of thing.
Yeah, another version is that most of his people that surround him love him.
Yes.
So he feeds on that, and he has that support. He has that spiritual support around him. And also he goes to church, and he is a believer and all that.
I would not know. I would not know. He can, he can go to church though. I mean, he may have a spiritual side to him, and he may believe that what he's doing is right. But those are his choices. Again, those are his choices.
Yeah. Well, everybody thinks they are right in the wars and the conflicts. They think they are right.
Yeah. No one thinks that they're a bad guy.
Yeah. Yeah. One more question I'm going to ask you from your story. You said that the experience on the other side was more real than here. I mean, can you describe that? And also, this world seemed like a dream for you.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard for us to imagine this. How more real is it? More colors, or was 5D?
5D.
That's what everybody's talking about, 5D right now. We're moving
Yeah,
to
right,
4D.
right. 5D, 4D, 5K for all the numbers. It's very hard to describe, but everything was brighter. Everything was clearer. Everything was in focus. It's like the analogy of wearing glasses. Okay, when we put the glasses on, everything is nice and clear. Okay, those people that have perfect vision, they're not going to get this analogy. But those of us that don't have perfect vision, when you take the glasses off, all of a sudden things aren't as clear. Things aren't as in focus. Okay. Well, that's kind of what it feels like. And not only that, but when you come back into this life, when you're outside of your body, there's that, I call it expansiveness, but there's also this feeling of freedom, of being larger. When we come back into our body, it feels confined, it feels heavy, it feels dense. It's like I feel confined in this body because I don't have that expansive awareness, so that I can't, I don't have the freedom that I have on the other side. So that makes it, I have more ability, I have more freedom, I have more opportunity because I can be in multiple locations at the same time. That's why it's so hyper real compared to this. And so this feels very confining, and that's why it feels kind of like a dream.
Yeah, so the analogy with glasses that you just brought up, it may be like the glasses are the awakening. You put the glasses on and you awaken. You took them off and you are back in delusion.
Yeah.
Okay, now, David, let me ask you this. If people want to find more about you, about what you do, about your podcast you mentioned, about your book, would you like to mention that in the podcast?
Sure. My book about my near-death experience and many of the spiritual experiences I had afterwards and how I learned to deal and live life is called Voyage of Purpose. And that's available pretty much everywhere online and everything. My website is Dharma Talks, DHARMA Talks, TALKS, one word, dharmatalks.com. And there you can, if you want to, if you're into social media, you can connect with me there. I have, links to all my social media. Also, I have my energetic healing that I do is there. But the podcast is kind of my giving back. I on YouTube, like your channel, I have a YouTube channel where I do my contemplative living podcast. But if you look for David Bennett, contemplative living, you probably end up seeing some videos of mine, and then, and I'd really appreciate it if you want to subscribe or, that sort of thing. Once a week, I do a podcast every week, and we take a certain subject, and we explore it. And it's only 15 minutes. The podcasts are only about 15 minutes long. They're very short, but they explore different aspects of contemplative living and the path towards spiritual maturity.
Now, one last question. What's your definition of freedom?
Ooh, my definition of freedom. That's a good question. I haven't thought much about
We just talked
freedom.
about that just a couple minutes ago.
Yeah, well, in the physical world, the ability to be able to make my choices and to be able to take the time to listen so that I'm fully aware and be able to move in a direction that I wish to move in.
Well, that requires a little bit of money in this physical world to do that.
Well, not a lot. Not a lot. I mean, I guess I don't have desires to be famous. That's for sure. Books don't make money. Podcasts don't make money. And I mean, you can't live off of this stuff. So, people think that, in fact, I had one person comment, oh, he makes his money off his website and his podcasts and this and that. I don't make a dime off my podcast. I don't make a dime off of sharing my experience, This is just, this is a way of giving back some thoughts, giving back some opportunities for people to think about things that maybe might enrich their life, might help them, give them some tools for living.